You are listening to audio from University Baptist Church in Beaver Creek, Ohio. Our mission is to make wholehearted followers of Christ who know Him and make Him known. Please enjoy this podcast and visit us at ubcbeavercreek.com for more information.
Welcome into UBC Talking Points. Our purpose is to make wholehearted followers of Jesus who know Him and make Him known through ministry and theology conversations. I am your host, Bryson Jackson, and today I am joined by Jim Corbin. How's it going today, my friend?
Bryson, it's going very well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Excited to have you here, Jim. Jim is our pastor of Missions and Mercy here at...
See, I can get you going.
For those listening, if you've never interacted with Jim has never necessarily referred to himself as a pastor, but he currently serves on our elder team. So that is a new development, and I definitely have been teasing him about that. But yeah, Jim serves in Missions and Mercy at our church, and so he'll have a lot to say specifically on our topic today for mission strategy. So before we get into that, though, Jim, I have an opening question, and this is just kind of as you feel led to share. But when did the Spirit invoke a passion for world missions in your heart? And then maybe also if you want to share a little bit about the heart of your wife, Sandy.
That's an interesting question. So I'd probably say if we're talking missions, and I'm going to clarify that to mean more of the evangelical, so sharing the gospel.
Okay.
It's probably in 2010. So I grew up with more of the come and see, so basically bringing people to church.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2010, I was actually signed up for a mission trip, which I thought was like a hammer and nails, literal hammer and nails trip. But it ended up being a trip to Africa to share the gospel, which I found out after I signed up for the trip. And at that point, having not been sharing the gospel, I was quite nervous, and I wasn't going to go. But Sandy told me I signed up, so therefore I had to go. And so I went. And so to Rwanda in November of 2010. And during the course of that week, the Holy Spirit talked to me. And so it wasn't literal, like I didn't hear the voice out of the sky, but I could tell in my heart that this is what I was supposed to be doing. Now, Sandy will tell you I came home changed from that trip. Completely changed is how she puts it. And so then she wanted to see what happened on the trip. So in 2011, we both went back to Rwanda. And since that time, we've both been, to use David Platt word, radically changed.
Praise the Lord. Were you working at that time in the business field?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd taken a week's vacation or week and a half's vacation and had signed up, and that's how I went.
Yeah. Working at LexisNexis.
Yeah, I was at LexisNexis at the time. I was actually working for the organizations which would have called Elsevier.
Okay. So prior to coming on staff at UBC and now serving as an elder, vocational ministry was not a part of your past?
No. But after 2010, God had provided a good position for me, which, just by chance. So I had 6 weeks of vacation. So I ended up spending many weeks doing mission trips.
That's awesome. Yeah. So the Lord just kind of stirring that in your heart over time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's cool. Well, I know that you are a huge advocate for every believer participating in those types of things as the Lord leads. So whether you are in a workforce or have a flexible schedule or whatever that looks like, being a part of the mission of God.
Yeah, and being part of the mission doesn't necessarily mean you have to literally go, right? You could be part of His mission, and we say there's different ways, right? You could be giving of your gifts to help somebody go. You could be praying for people that go, but you're still part of the mission when you do that.
Absolutely. It's good. Well, that does a great job of kind of opening up some of our dialogue here and conversation. So let's think through, first off, some kind of key definitions as we think about missions. So when we say that term, missions, what does that mean? And then what is the difference between, say, local missions in your neighborhood versus traveling to another country to participate in kingdom work of some sort? How do we help us get some framework here for definitions of missions?
All right. So normally when I'm using the word missions, or I would say those are talking and with that kind of thing, we're really thinking about going cross-cultural, or you're going across an ethnic group, or you're going across a geographical barrier. So missions with the S. Okay, I'm trying to be a little bit specific there. Really means you're going across some barrier. So where I would sit there and say is if we're doing gospel sharing work here locally, I would call it more of an outreach, because I'm not truly going across now I get we can have immigrants, we can have people groups here in our neighborhoods. So there would be some missions aspect to that. But if I'm doing missions work, I'm going across some kind of cultural or geographical barrier. So I would call gospel sharing if I'm talking to my family, but I wouldn't say I'm on missions when I'm doing that.
Okay. So neighborhood, local kind of aspects, you would tend to use the term more outreach just to further define.
Define it.
Yeah. Because obviously, we all have a missional component to, what it is that we're called to do as a believer, even just as part of who we are in Christ. Our call is to be missional, but it's not necessarily missions in the definitional sense of crossing some sort of cultural barrier, language barrier, some kind of national difference, something along those lines.
Right. Missional is any ministry that's going outside the four walls.
Okay.
Right. So you're missional. But when we're talking about missions, then there's a little bit more of a cultural and or a geographic.
That's helpful. That's good. At UBC, we use the term missions and mercy together a lot. And so that's like your current job, title is pastor/director of missions and mercy. So can you distinguish between those two and give us some examples of how you think through those differences? How do they work together? What are their different functions?
Yeah. So when we talk about mercy, we're talking about sharing the love of Christ compassionately. Okay. And so we may be showing up, for example, when the tornadoes came through here in 2019, right? We're compassionately helping the families in need. So we're sharing Christ's love with them by helping them out. So the intent of the interaction is just showing love. So I would say mercy, that's your initial intent. When we talk about missions, my intent is to be gospel sharing. So, but to make sure we have a mercy with an intent, here what we're thinking is even within our mercy organizations, the intent is at some point I'm building relationships where I will get the opportunity to share the gospel. But that's not the first and foremost reason why I'm interacting with you to start, because I'm sharing compassion with you. But to make sure that we're different from other organizations or religions that also have mercy, we need to be looking for those opportunities where we get to share the gospel with them at some point.
So definitionally, we're thinking mercy in the sense of caring for some sort of physical need, some sort of like meeting needs in some kind of tangible way.
Tangible needs, yeah.
And then missions, we're defining that a little bit more to spiritual need.
Correct.
Okay. So if we're in a different cultural context, you can participate in mercy ministry through like medical mission or, a lot of the food or work that a lot of missionaries will do. That would be, you would categorically put that more in like a mercy category, and then mission would be like hey, we're opening the door through Mercy Ministry to get to the mission. Is that how you kind of think through that, or?
Yeah, I would say so. From a missions aspect, there's a 4-field thought process.
Okay.
And the first field is what we call the empty field. So I have to have some way, just like a farmer that's going to go plant a seed in the field. He's going to, initially, he may have to go take the rocks out. He may have to remove something. So he's going to clean the field so that he can go ahead and plant the seed. So in the same way, a medical mission, I can take a medical team in so that they can meet some physical needs. But at the same time, then I can have a team or others on the team that are there to share the gospel. Because I want to open up the door. Now, what we don't do on the trips that we would do is I don't share the gospel before you get the medical attention, because then people can just sit there and say yes because they think they have to get that door opened.
Right.
Same way would be even when I'm doing a water well, like you said. So I'm doing something mercifully because I'm open. I'm trying to get into the field. But on those things, there'd be a more. There's more of a focused area to get to the gospel.
Okay.
So versus just I'm going to do the water well and I'm going to leave. I'm doing the water well because I really hope I'm going to get into that gospel conversation.
Some kind of like bridge building work.
Bridge building.
And even if you think of the work of Jesus, the meeting of tangible needs is never alone.
Right.
There's always the meeting of the tangible need, then with the meeting of a spiritual need. Right. And so those things going hand in glove is kind of throughout Scripture. And so if that's our thought process of modeling after the life of Christ, then when we come to other people's, how can we tangibly take care of them and meet their needs, but then also, bringing the ultimate need meet it's found in the work of Christ.
Right. And I would say that's the difference when we look at denominations, religions, right? Of how we would do mercy versus other religions that would do mercy.
Sure. Yeah, that's good. Cool. Well, I mean, we've talked a little bit we just talked about some of the kind of concepts that we see in the life and ministry of Christ. But what are some of the key guiding principles in the Word that make it clear to you that we, as in like the American church at large, should be involved in what we know as world missions? So, I mean, I've heard this before, the concept that there are thousands of completely lost people all over the Great Dayton area, right? So why spend the money to go cross cultures when we don't speak the language? Or why would I go to a nation like a China or a Uganda or Ethiopia? Like, why would we go there when there are thousands of people that need to be discipled that are lost right here?
So I'm going to break that into two different thought processes.
Okay, that's
and
good.
I'm going to answer the first one, which is the local area, so the Dayton.
Okay.
And you are correct if we talk about the lostness here in Dayton, right? You have roughly 1 million people in the Miami Valley, which we would say are not true followers of Jesus, right? But to me, that's more of what we talked about before, local outreach, right? Part of our DNA as Christ followers should truly be to share the gospel. So as we're going through our day-to-day work, that would be just something we would necessarily do, right? But now as we talk about biblical verses, one, I could sit there and say, well, if I want to think about God is a missional God. So from the beginning of Genesis, right, all the way through the end of Revelation, you can almost sit there and say every verse is missional to some extent. But if we're talking some of the key verses, of course, everybody's going to point to Matthew 28, 18 to 20, right?
Yeah.
Jesus said, go make disciples. But there's also, if we go into Romans 10, right, which is actually pointing back to Isaiah. So it's not just the New Testament, right? So if you talk about, because Paul references Isaiah in Romans 10 when he's talking about, how will they hear if someone doesn't go, right? I can go Matthew 24:14, right? Christ is talking to his disciples, and he says the gospel will be preached to all the earth,
all the world,
and then I will return.
Yeah.
So there are, and that's just a couple quick verses, but there's many other verses that we can pull out, but all of them then point to Revelation 7, right? When you get to Revelation 7, 9, and 10, and every language, tongue, tribe are all around the throne.
Yeah.
And so the idea is God wants us, he doesn't need us, right? He could do it any way he wants to declare it, but he wants to use us to take his message around the world.
That's right.
So how will that tribe or how will that people group come to know Jesus unless we, as in Romans says, how do we go and take it? So someone has to do it. Someone has to be the first one that's going to take it to a people group. Now, that doesn't mean everybody from the United States, right? But, so for example, let's say we go to a country in Africa. And I'll use Uganda as an example. Well, there's unreached people groups in northern Uganda. Well, the Ugandans can end up reaching them. Doesn't mean we have to be the only ones that are going there. But at some point, someone had to get the message to Uganda. And they did. So now you hand it off. And then the idea is you're raising up people that are closer to that culture that can take it in.
You use a term there that I think has become more common vernacular, but I don't want to just assume that everybody knows what we mean by that. The unreached people group terminology. How do we define an unreached people group? What is that exactly when we talk about that in a missions context?
So an unreached people group is one where we would normally say less than 2% are evangelical.
Okay.
And you also can throw into there, is there a church movement? Is there a movement within the people group?
Yeah.
And so because you want to see Christ being known within the people group with their heart language versus a translator, because there's 5,000 plus unreached people group left, all different tongues or languages, and not one person's going to know all those.
Yeah. The Matthew 28 call of making disciples of all nations, implying that there is a baseline in that command, that it's not just go make a bunch of disciples, right? There is a specific piece in that Great Commission command, because a lot of times we use that term of like, oh, well, that just means that every believer is called to be a part of the discipleship mandate. And that's true, right? We're called to make disciples where we're planted. But intentionally, there is kind of that world mindset of all ethnos, all people groups, all nations, to be, and I use that term ethnos because it's not from a first century mind. We're not thinking of like the geopolitical national powers that we understand as nations today. It's just people groupings, languages, tongues, tribes. That's what Revelation 7 is talking about. And so that all those different people groups need to have access to the gospel, and for them to have the ability to be making disciples, raising up churches, right? That's when we're talking about going to unreached people groups and making disciples among the nations. That's kind of what we're talking about practically. Right,
because if you looked at, like you just used the word, nations in our boundaries, India was not a nation of India until the 1940s time period.
Exactly.
Right? And so when you look at that, it's, and even today, there's some discussion about where does the boundary end and, where you go. So if you move the boundary, a few miles this way or a few miles that way, a people group is inside or outside of that quote unquote nation.
Yeah.
And so to your point, the word that they were using there was not nations, it was for ethne, which means a people group or a language, different people. But I was going to go back with you when you said Matthew 28, 18, 20, it is, go and make disciples, commanding them to obey. So part of when we take the gospel, there is the obedience based. But the other part of that is, when we talk about the Great Commandment, I always want to remind everybody there's a great promise in there as well. Because when we go, it's not like we're going on our own. because he also said, "Lo, I'm with you
Amen.
until the end."
That's right.
So he didn't stop, even though he sent the Spirit. So Jesus and the Spirit, they are with us as we're going. So we're not going and doing this on our own.
That's great. It's a good reminder. We want to try to dig into some practicals here, but we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back in just a second.
Hey, UBC, if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in learning more about our Mission and Mercy Ministries, you can head to www.ubcbeavercreek.com/Mission and Mercy Ministries. There you can learn about UBC's Mercy and Mission Ministries, upcoming local, national, and international mission trips, and find our monthly updates to catch the excitement of what God is doing here and around the world. www.ubcbeavercreek.com/Mission and Mercy Ministries. Find the link in the podcast notes.
And we are back. Listen, Jim, we've talked a lot about some deeper kind of concepts, baseline terminology, key ideas here as we think about mission strategy, but let's talk some more specifics related to our church and some of the things that just our current circumstances right now and who we're working with and what it would mean for UBC members to get more involved. So who are some of our key international mission partners right now? And then in your role at UBC, what is your vision and strategy with our missionary partners? And just give us kind of the lay of the land as you see it.
Well, first, within UBC, we support partners, missionaries at different levels. So given we're part of the Southern Baptist Convention, we do also support the co-op. And what that means is IMB sends long-term missionaries, and even through the co-op, there's some NAM money that happens there. So there's church planting in the U.S. and Canada that'll be support. The hard part with that is you're not tied to a specific missionary and or church planner. Like the IMB can connect you to somebody, and if you want to do a trip, but there's no what I would say ongoing. So we here at UBC, we also then support missionaries outside the IMB. And right now, as of today, here in October 2024, we are supporting 19 other missionaries, which means we're sending them monthly support. Some of them have been sent by UBC, right? So we have sent missionaries that are here in the U.S., and they're working either with AIA or Crew, something like that. And we have some that are international, whether they're going through organization called ABWE. They could be doing medical trips, and we have some that are being teachers in other nations as well. But with that, what we're doing is we're becoming more, I'll use the word day-to-day, even though we're not communicating day-to-day, but we're hearing specific needs from a specific person that's in the field. And so that gives us a tie as a corporate body to be praying for specific missionaries. And we've gone like a step further, is we've even gone to growth groups and asked growth groups to adopt the missionaries that we're supporting. So now not only are we just telling the congregation, hey, there's 19 missionaries that we're supporting financially, we're asking growth groups to adopt, which doesn't mean send more money, but it means get closer to them, have ongoing communications. So one example of this would be, I won't do the specific, I will. So the Jeff Van Scoy Growth Group as an example. So they've adopted a missionary that's in the South Asia area. And so they're using a Signal, which is a communication tool, where they're able to talk to that individual more frequently than waiting for even a monthly update. So if that missionary and or the family have a prayer need that they need someone to be praying for them, someone holding the rope back home, we're providing those opportunities. So even though we're not the sending church, we're wanting to be there that close with them in their day-to-day. So that's one way we're getting the growth groups here.
Really quick, just to interject, you use the term holding the rope. I've heard you use that a number of times. Can you explain what you mean by the holding the rope terminology?
Yeah. So when the missionaries are going in the field, somebody back home is helping them. That's the way we're supporting them. So holding the rope. So like, if you're going in a cavern, right, and you go in a cave and you're starting to go down there, somebody is holding that rope back there for you, and you feel the love and the support. So it's kind of that kind of aspect.
Yeah, it's good.
So, and then the next step we're doing, so this year we're rolling out what I'm going to call our partnerships also with a few of our supported missionaries. And in this case, what we're doing is trying to get the members here at UBC comfortable about going into the field, right? So we use short-term trips to support some of our missionaries and to serve them. So we're going to be looking to go to 3 different cultures, each one a little bit different, right? So we will have a missionary in South America. So it's Pastor Fabian, because you asked some of the key ones, but I'm not saying that they're more important than the other 19, right? But as we're doing partnerships, we're going to go work with Pastor Fabian in Argentina. There are 4 unreached people groups in Argentina. He is specifically working with 2. And as a church body, we can come alongside and go with him and his local church to the indigenous people group. And since it's in South America, Argentina, you have a little bit more bandwidth with the ages who could go. We're also going to, we have a partnership starting with Buddy Bond, who's in Namibia, which is in Africa. So culturally, it's a lot different than if we're just going to go into South America, right? A little bit further away to go. What you would see is going to be a little bit different. But that part of Africa, I would say, culturally is different. It's still not North Africa. So I'm going to use the word safe, but I'm going to use that in air quotes for those that are watching or listening. You're not watching, you're listening. But anyways, it's a little safer, but I can still take people from the church realizing we can go serve, right? And there are unreached people groups in Namibia. So the question is, well, how can we help Buddy and his local church reach them, right? And when we do these types of trips, there's encouragement to the church that's in the front line, right? That they're trying to reach them, that there's somebody that's praying for them and it's working with them. The third partnership we're doing, and I'm going to use the initials here, is there's a missionary couple, H&L, that we're working with that are in South Asia. So they're in a country that's over 90% Muslim, almost 10% Hindu, and less than 0.5% Christians. But it's a country which we can go in as if we're working and to help a nonprofit, and where we're encouraging by now we're going to be discipling Muslim background believers. We can't actively go door to door and share the gospel as we can in Argentina or Namibia, but we can disciple, encourage, and bring along to new believers in that country so they can then go out and reach up to 280-ish unreached people groups that are in that country.
Absolutely. So you have been working to build strategic partnerships in different continental, cultural exposure kind of areas with the intent of UBC members who want to grow in their understanding of what's going on around the world, partnering with local churches and the work that's going on. And then, Lord willing as well, for those that the Lord might call to go, right? Like we believe in short-term missions because they promote and give exposure to the capacity of actually laying down your life and going, right?
We don't know who God's calling long-term. So Bryson, as an example, you went with me to South Asia. And God may not be calling you as a long-term mission, but individuals that you know and you come back and you talk to, their heart may change a little bit when they hear about what happened in South Asia.
Yeah.
And then they may want to go on that trip, and that may be what God's calling them to go to the nations.
Absolutely.
So I see short-term trips as a way to brighten or to give vision to anybody that's sitting in our local context.
Yeah.
And then, God may call somebody from the church then that goes long term. The other thing about one more thing, if it's okay with you, talking
please.
about the country in South Asia, there's another term, it's called the 1040 window when we talk missions.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1040 window is where most of what you would say the unreached people groups are. In fact, 29 out of every 30 people that we would consider to be unreached.
Why is it called 1040 window?
Because if you look at the 10 degree and 40 degree
longitude, latitude. Yeah.
So that it's in that. And primarily that's where you have Muslim, Hindu, Buddhism, all are the primary religions.
So we're talking like North Africa, Middle East, South Asia.
Yeah, going up into like Nepal and that part of the area.
Got it.
But yes, but in there, and so the 1040 window is, you got less than 3% of missionaries that are going into a 1040 window because it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? We stand out. But the opportunity we have with H&L is we as the local church here can literally go to the 1040 window and be making an impact for the kingdom.
Yeah.
So that's a way where we can not just say, hey, we understand there's a 1040 window. This is where we can go into the 1040 window and see how God's working there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So Jim, when you start to build these kinds of relationships, why is it important to work with like local churches and disciple makers when engaging in the international community? Why don't we kind of set up our own thing? Why do we partner? Give us just kind of a broad overview on some of your thoughts there.
Well, so if we're going on a short-term trip, you're in a country, it doesn't matter to me if I'm in the Asia 1040 window or if I'm in South America. If I'm only there for a week, to me, the worst thing I can do is tell someone about Jesus and then leave. I'm not helping them being made disciples.
Yeah, I mean, they can even say the prayer, but it's like, okay,
right.
we weren't called to make converts, Matthew 28.
No,
called to make disciples.
Yeah, right. And so you have the parable of the 4 seeds, right? So where's the seed fallen? And just because someone, like you just said, someone prays a prayer, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're on a short-term trip, the term we use it's like if I had a baby, would I just put the baby on the side of the road?
Absolutely not. No.
Baby's going to die, right? It's not going to get fed. So when we do a short-term trip, I want to be working, especially because I'm not going into a country that's a frontier country, meaning the gospel's not known.
Yeah.
I'm not staying there long enough to grow it. So what the local church there allows me to do is I'm handing off. So anybody we found, whether it's a new believer or maybe someone who is not associated to a local church for whatever reason, but they know who Jesus is, we're handing them off to somebody that's going to make the disciple. Hmm. And if we're making disciples, part of that DNA that's in us is we want to make other disciples, which means we want to share the gospel. So handing off to a local pastor and his church, right? Because the pastor's not going to disciple everybody on his own. Right? He's going to have a church that's helping him disciple. Hmm. And so that's the reason why everywhere we're going from UBC, we're trying to work with a local church in their context.
That's good. All right. Well, why don't we get down to straight up brass tacks right here? Okay. Say I'm a regular UBC attender wanting to start getting involved in the mission of God, as we've described it, connecting with world missions. What is my first step?
Well, first step is I'd love to talk to you to see where your heart is.
Okay.
But so you got to decide, is God calling you to go on a trip, right? And so let's talk about the different trips that we can get you on. But you may have so if you don't have a specific country on your heart, then yes, I'm going to ask you, let's go on the trips that we know we can already get set up just to see how God's moving in you. But let's say you're a member here and you already have a nation that's on your heart and we're not going there for whatever, we don't have the thing. I still want to come talk to you because part of my role, I believe, is getting you connected in some way, somehow with either an organization or a person that has a tie to that country. So if you want to go see if that's where God's calling you, I'm going to try to get you there. So that would be the second one. Then after that is if we're going to go on a trip, then we'll talk about how do we raise money, how do we get you there, all that kind of stuff like that. How you put a prayer team together. Because even when we go on the trips, we're not going alone. We use this term holding the rope. While prayer team is what's holding the rope for you back home, even when you're on a short-term trip. Praying for you, praying for the country you're going to, the city, the church, the pastor, all that kind of stuff.
That's good. Yeah. And I mean, I would just also add to that, is I'm sure that you would probably say this. We begin the process of missions in our hearts, in our relationship with the Lord, in our local community, in our relationships here, and then taking that around the world. Right. Like, I think that so many of us make excuses about like, oh, well, I'm just too busy right now, or I don't have the money to take a trip, or I don't have the vacation time. And it's just like, well, listen, first of all, you can start praying now for the people that are lost around you. You can start actively engaging in the prayer lists of these mission partners and start praying for what's going on around the world. You can begin engaging in local mission with the intent of stirring your heart for global mission, right? Like you take baby steps as the Lord allows you. Maybe you're just I'm all in, I'm ready to go overseas right now. Maybe you're like that, but probably a lot of people that are listening would honestly feel really intimidated by all of this. And so
I would use the term outreach, right? And so if you remember back in January of 24, we had the Multiply series. And then we've talked about that again, like how do we do that? Wholehearted followers of Jesus are making him known. Well, we can do that local. And so one way we do that, there is training we can provide, right? And to your point, with that training is who are the people in your relationships? It doesn't matter if it's family, it could be relatives, it could be neighbors, coworkers, friends, people that don't know we don't know hearts, right? But we can see, are they bearing fruit? So people we think that may be far from God. And to your point, we start praying for them. And then part of the training is, I just don't know how to go from praying for them to sharing the gospel. I don't know how to share the gospel, right? So we have Made to Multiply training, which will help give you an opportunity how to use tools like the 3 circles, right? So we'll let you practice sharing the gospel using simple tools that are reproducible. But yes, to where you were going with that. So then you could start with your neighbors. You could start with your friends.
Yeah, I think some of it really is stirring up those affections.
Yeah.
And then taking the steps as the Lord allows. I love that you and Sandy, regularly lead the prayer walks and the Made to Multiply trainings. I think, have been really beneficial for a lot of folks just to think through, how do I share my faith? And some of those simple first steps, I think, prepare you then for a lot of the different ministry contexts, that you might find yourself in if you take one of these trips. But just continuing to get exposed and continuing to take the steps. Like, I think that's one of my big takeaways when we have these conversations, Jim, is always, I want to be involved, and I don't ever want to make excuses in different seasons of life of why I can't. I don't ever want to get so caught up with just saying, oh, I have to do more. Right. That's not it. But it is also just to say, like, I believe in this, right? I see those biblical principles that we talked about at the beginning. And if that is a guiding principle for my life, then I want to be involved. And Lord, help me to be able to do that in this season and not, I think of 1 Timothy, where Paul says, don't let anyone look down upon you because you're young. Instead, set an example, right? So I don't want to say, for me as a young guy, you can't participate in that because you have to do X, Y, Z, or you're not experienced enough or whatever. It's like, no. Like get involved, go. Like there are opportunities here. There are things happening around the world where we don't know how much time we have. And so the mission of God is here. It's now. And we have a job to do.
Well, when Jesus came, he said the kingdom of God is upon us, kingdom of heaven and kingdom of God. And so it's now and today until he returns. You brought up Timothy, so I'm going to bring up 2 Timothy, right? And so Paul's dying, and he's telling Timothy his body's being poured out. So he knows the end's there. And what's he tell him? Well, earlier in the chapter, he's explaining to him why he needs to hold on to the gospel and be sharing it, because that is truly what I believe one of the primary missions of the church that's still here. Right? It's one thing we're not going to be doing in heaven. And that's telling somebody the gospel. Just being, real.
Yeah.
But while we're here, that's one of the primary reasons why the church is still here.
It's our job.
It's our job.
Yeah, it's good.
Whether it's a local context, right, or going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim, this has been a fantastic conversation, but we're running out of time, so I do need to close it down. But just thank you so much for being on here with us, and lots of helpful content and conversation, and I think as well, just good dialogue here. So I hope that this has been helpful for you, our listeners, and that you consider how the Lord might use you to make him known in your home, your community, and the world. We'll see you next time on another episode of UBC Talking Points.